Alright, and so now in this part of this series, I'm going to explain how to cut those holes in the walls so that you can see out through these openings in the tunnel. We have seen some examples. I will now actually rather go and explain a little bit more about some of the infrastructure we have in Dogwaffle so you can understand what is the swap buffer. Or the swap image. We have here, this represents your regular image. It's sort of a perspective view from the side. And so let's say you have an image in here, right? And that image you can think of as the frame. In fact, maybe it's framed with some sort of a nice wooden frame. There's actually a feature in the image menu right there where you can do that. You can frame your work. Right, so you can add some wooden frame or some other plastic frame or some other styles around it. But the thing is also, this is when you see it from the front. Imagine you were seeing it from the back side, or imagine you just had another image next to it, right? Kind of a twin situation. So you have one image here, and you have another image here, and you think of it as being stacked up one behind another. So here is one image, and here is another image behind it, slightly kind of visible from the side. Let me see if I can use my drawing skills a little bit better. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, or maybe just make this one a little bit smaller like that. Alright, so let's say we have an image like this, and whatever that image contains, and then here is another image, right? And it's behind it. So we call this one here the swap image, right? And this one here is the main image. Main image. Ooh, my handwriting is not perfect. I'm using a tablet here. It's much better than using a mouse when you write and sketch like that, but still a little bit challenging at times. So let's say we have this image here, and this one contains, I don't know, maybe some numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some numbers that have been written into it here. And this one here contains, let's say we need to erase this. I'm going to go back and erase with the right button here, because the right button color, or the secondary color, is currently set to white, and since the background is white, it looks like I'm erasing. So let's say here we have an image of just a dot that's filled all like this. Alright. And what I'd like to do really is cut this open as a whole, make it look like I'm looking through this, and I will see if my eye is over here, I will see along this line, it will see whatever is in this area here, right? So I should be able to cut a hole here, or make whatever is black here, make that open up the pixels that are actually behind it. That's the technique with the swap. It is very similar to using layers, and in fact you can see that we do have layers also, although they're not really the same type of layers as you might be used to having in Photoshop or PaintShop Pro or other imaging photo editing programs. We don't do opaque layers, but we do layers, and you can stack up a bunch of layers like these and have one image in one place, and maybe pick a red color to paint in another layer right here, and then and you can hide it so you can see this layer here, and you can go to another layer and put, maybe, let's say, select a yellow color and put that one there, but you can tell that it's combining with the others. It's not replacing it. If I do some blue, you see it's doing some combination modes, and that's the default layer mode. We don't have a replace mode. We do have 20 or 30 different ways to combine them though, and there's plenty of use for that. You can see I'm using this to reveal some other image behind it, and that's what you can do with the screen mode, and you can adjust the amount of blending here or combining. So there are plenty of other uses for these layers other than just hiding one. I mean, if you want to hide an image, why even use a layer? No, I'm kidding. Of course, there's plenty of uses for opaque layers too, and sometimes we wish we had them, but there's plenty of times where we actually don't really need them. And what I'm going to go back to now is kind of focus on the swap image, which, you know, in a way is like similar to if I don't have this layer, but if I have these two layers, you could imagine the bottom one being the main image and the other one being the swap image. It's very similar to that, but it's actually next to that. It's in addition to that. So you have all these layers, and in addition to that, you also have a main image and a swap image. Right. So the swap image, you can actually see them here too, up there in the upper right corner, where you see the, I mean, in the left you see the image of the brush. In the middle you see the image of the paper texture. And in the right side, you see the currently viewed image, the main image or the swap image. And you can swap from one to the other. For instance, from the image menu, you can say jump to the swap image. Bingo, now you see that one. Oh, and I still see the layer here on top. Let's go and delete this layer. Let's not confuse this anymore than necessary. Okay, so we have, currently this one is blank. And we can actually switch the size of these layers to somewhere here. Jumbo thumbnail. It's a little bit bigger here now. You see it right here, it's blank, and up here at the top it shows you what image you're looking at. It is a swap, right? The swap image. I used to call this the swap buffer. It's sort of a placeholder. Call it the canvas, call it the buffer, call it the image. It's a raster, a number of pixels. And you can put an image in here too. Let's say, like I said, we have a couple of numbers, 1, 2, 3. We just paint those in here, or we use the text tool, right? Maybe this one here, and say we need a few more numbers, 6, 7, 8, 9, and well, let's put 0 there, and let's make it big. Let's say all the way to the max, like this. And choose a font that we will actually see, and yeah, something like that. Let's go and make sure we don't clip it off too much, something like this, and we'll make this actually into a brush. Let's make this a brush, and we can see the preview of the brush. There it is, and then we can perhaps make it fully opaque. There you go, and now we can go and stamp it down a few times. Right, so we have these numbers showing up everywhere. Or if we didn't have it fully opaque, let's undo this a few times. If we go to opacity a little bit lower, something like this, then we have, you can see the cumulative effect of overlapping it a few times, right? If you paint over that. Anyway, so this is an image, and it is in the swap buffer or in the swap image, right? I can switch back to the other one now, and this is another place where you can do that. Right here, this toggles back and forth. Okay, so you have that here in the image menu, and there it is. And you have it also up here, the toggle shortcut. Now, the nice thing about this is you don't have to see just one or the other. You can actually see them both at the same time, and there's a couple of ways to do that. One is to simply click here, and that will enable the layer mixing. Click that, and now both of them are showing. It's very similar to two layers that are now combined in some ways. Again, there is no opaque mode on that, but you can right click on that, you can see different layer modes. Very similar to what you had over here with the layer blending modes. Alright, that is pretty much the same thing. But it's just sort of a pre-arranged set of just two layers, the main image and the swap image, and different ways to combine them. And so now what we'll do is we will say another way to combine them, and that is through wherever the image is black. The image here, the main image, has a hole, the black hole, and we want to see through it. Alright, so let me erase this one here and actually draw a black area, a black hole. I'm gonna go and make that an oval that is filled. Not the text tool, where's the oval? There. Alright, and I'm gonna draw it, not blue, but actually let's start with let's start with green or blue. Let's do blue first. Okay, and I'll do a couple of blue. I do one here. That's a different blue than we had there. Right, so I'm gonna do basically sort of a pattern with areas that I know I don't want to see blue eventually. I want to actually cut through, make them transparent, cut holes through them. So what you can imagine is you can obviously just click here and see them both, but that's not what we want. What we want to do is combine in other ways, not the multiply or the subtractive or additive mode. These are interesting, but not usable for what we're trying to do right now here. So there is, however, a blue screen mode. And in the blue screen mode, what you will do is basically say, show me whatever I can see through the pixels that are blue. So any blue pixels in my main image, should reveal not that blue pixel, but rather the pixel behind it, the image behind it from the swap image. So you can click that and you can see indeed it's starting to reveal the color or the pixels, the numbers that are behind it, right? I mean, here's if I switch to that, this is what they look like. They are this kind of, let's give it a different color. Let's do a make sure it's not bluish. Let's give it a change the hue, for instance, and give it a reddish. Where there you go, a little bit more saturation. That's not red. That's more like a green. All right. Maybe we just need to add some colors. Oh, you know what? We can paint a little bit here, and right click here to select a reddish or a different color here. There's some yellow. Let's give it some green, and there you go. So we have basically a lot of different colors in the swap image. Let's switch back to, or jump back to the main image, and we want to cut opens here. We want to cut some holes wherever the blue parts are. We want to actually reveal the colors from the image behind it, right? And bingo, there you are. Now you're seeing the image behind it. Now I do that in this case simply by toggling the swap mixing. That's with the right button. You can see with the left button you can enable or disable it. With the right button you see a little menu and there's a swap mixing. That's exactly what calls the mixing with the swap image. And if you look at this here, you have other modes, other ways to do it. I am currently on blue screen. And I can, this is the one case where, by the way, blue screen is good. You could do green screen, and there is not much green in those blue circles. There is a little bit in this teal color. That's why it starts showing a little bit through it here. And that's really what this is all about. You can choose a variety of blending modes. And if we are looking for a particular effect, many times the trick is really to adjust the type of blending you use, and then also perhaps some of the blending modes may have some extra parameters. There's a set tracing paper opacity. That's something that can also be useful. That's if we set it to tracing paper mode. That would be this one here. I have not used all of these options. Really, there are a variety of different uses for that. What I want to show you though is that you can use a color and key on it. Keying to the color means like to seek out that color and then do something with just those pixels that have that color. So magic pink is a case where we look for pink or magenta or green screen, and then there's blue screen. So I'm gonna look for blue screen, and anything that's blue is showing the pixels underneath it. Now I don't want to do that through those 2 or 3 steps, and then how do you combine that in the final result? You want to essentially say, okay, keep it that way, even if I don't enable the swap mixing, right? You could actually say this here, merge with swap. Merge it in what way? Well, exactly in this layered way. Okay, so when you merge it with swap, you now have a final result, and it's no longer in need of that swap image. It's now been blended together. It's been burnt into it. And that's exactly what we're talking about. We have holes that we're cutting in, right? We're cutting, for instance, if I'm starting with, let's say, a yellow background here, and then I'm drawing some blue. Let's go back to the blue. There you go. And I'm drawing some, oh, I'm still on that brush here. Let's go and use the simple brush, a large simple brush. And I'm drawing in, let's draw some blue here. Right. So whatever I'm drawing in blue, whether it's a circle, whether it's a filled area, anything that's blue here, I want that to actually show me the image behind it. Right. So here's how you do that. You go to the filter. You go to combine with swap, or even better, composite with swap. Because combine with swap is similar to this with some of these combination layer modes, right? You can mix the two buffers and you can say how much of this buffer you want or how much of this one. So you can see the swap, the swap image, the main image or the swap image. But you will really probably want to use the filter composite. You want to composite the two. So we're talking about compositing two images into one. And there are some presets saying, hey, find any blue pixels, please, and show me the image behind it. Click that, and that's where you get. You get to see the image, the pixels of the image behind it, the swap image. And you can adjust a little bit how much you want to really say that is blue or no, that's not blue at all. So you can adjust that. Sometimes when you have some of these light blue colors or green blue or blue green or teal, there is a little bit blue there, and you don't want those transparent. You want only transparent the parts that are really rock solid blue. So there is also, you can show the matte. The matte is basically showing you where does it see complete blue and where does it not. So the black part says there's no blue here at all. The white part says, yep, that's all blue. And then there may be some transitions where it's not one or the other, but somewhere in between. And that would be sometimes really useful to see where it bleeds a little bit through it as well. All right, so that's one technique that we can use, and we can use that across the entire image of an animation, right? So if you imagine if I have an animation like this is a single image actually, and I'm not erasing it to blue, of course. I'm going to erase to yellow. There you go. But I want an animation where maybe there's a circle that goes from left to right. Right, let's remember those James Bond movies where you got sort of the target going from right to left until it finds the person is going to shoot. What you, or maybe not. What we want to do is draw a circle that's moving from left to right. So let's draw that circle in blue. Yep, with the fill tool, and simply draw something like this. Right, here's your blue circle, and what I want to do is have it go from left to right in an animation. So I'm going to start with an animation like this and say here's my 55 frames animation, or let's make it 60, so it's an even 2 seconds if we animate this at 30 frames a second. Right, so we have an animation. The dot is not moving yet. That's what we need to do now, is to move that dot from left to right. And what we can do is we can use a timeline for that, a timeline filter. That's a collection similar to these filters, but it's going to let you not just apply this filter across the entire image sequence. It's going to allow you to also change the parameters on these positions along the timeline, so you can keyframe it. And what we'll do is we'll use the keyframe to move it from left to right. It could be the filter to transform in general, and this rotation and scale as well, or we can just shift it. There's a shift. So the transform would allow you to move it around, but it doesn't tile or replicate the parts that it loses. Still, you could sometimes use that if you want to translate it sideways and then later patch it up, or you can make it bigger, and in some respect you can use that. I think the better one here is shift. Let's use the shift tool, and the shift tool is going to replicate the edges that it shifts out. So the image actually comes back, you see, in a perfect symmetrical way. This is actually a good way to quickly create 4 corners with blue half circles or quarter circles, right? But what you want to do is say, okay, let's shift it from maybe even from the outside. No, actually no, because it's coming back. Let's have it from here. That will be on the first frame. So let's make sure we position ourselves on the first frame here and keyframe that, right? And now you see there is no value on, we are in the middle on the Y, but the X value we want to move to the right. So let's go to the last frame and change that until we reach kind of here. We don't want to go and touch that because the other one is going to show on here, but we can adjust the position in order to have the exact, there it is. Place it there and click plus to add a keyframe. Now this keyframe by default is a spline interpolated one. If I want to do a straight line, I'll uncheck this so that it's not doing the spline interpolation, it's a straight linear interpolation. And now I can go and apply that. So it's applying that shift. This animation now is done. and we have this blue thing going across. And that blue thing is what we'll use to keyframe and to cut holes to see the image behind it. Remember, we still have that blending mode. We can actually see through it. We can also see through it here. In fact, we can keep this enabled and just scrub through that, and we can see parts of the swap image that's behind it. Okay, so that's the magic here. We use the blue pixels to see the images, the pixels that are actually in the swap image. You don't believe that that's the swap image? Well, you can always switch it around. There you go, you can see it. Look at this part here. It's still there, right? So that's the trick with the swap image. We can use pixels of particular color, and that's not the only way to do it, but that is one way, one intuitive way to do it. If you have a unique color or a black value versus the rest being, you know, white or gray or somewhat different from black, if you can identify a color of a particular pixel, you can say I want all of the pixels of that same color to be transparent within a certain margin, right? It doesn't have to be exactly matching that exact color. It could be within a certain margin. So how do we apply that? Because right now here I'm just playing with this here, but I'd like to actually apply that and make it permanent. Well, again, in the timeline, because we could actually do that right here under the filter and composite with swap. We could say that's blue screen, and you can apply that across the entire animation. And if the parameters are not changing, if you don't want more or less or change the high filter or any of these, if you don't need to change them across the timeline, that's good. You can actually do it right there. Here you would actually be able to do the same thing. Let me show you that. If I go to composite with swap, there is the group of combine, but we want to go further into composite. There's the blue screen, and when you do the composite with swap, you can do the same thing. You see how it's blue, and here applying through blue, it will adjust and make that transparent and show you the pixels behind it. And again, if you don't need to change the amount of transparency, the amount of blue detection, and the keying doesn't need to use any tolerance of varying amount, you can actually, instead of using this timeline, you can do this right there. You can go to filter, composite with swap, blue screen, and then simply apply it across the entire timeline. The difference, though, there's a couple of differences. One is you cannot do an undo. Here with the timeline, you have one level of undo. So if you apply it and then check it and verify and see, oh wait, no, something wasn't quite good, you can actually undo it. If you do it here, not so much. Now, one thing that you can do, however, before you apply this, one thing I recommend you is you store this animation. Again, storing this animation either into memory or to disk takes very little time, very little effort, and no need to specify like a codec or file format or the path to the directory and all that. All you do is you say save it, store it in memory or somewhere in a placeholder, and this animation is now stored and ready to be put back in place. Alright, so that's a very important thing to do. And now we can go, even if we don't use this, if we simply go to filter, animated, the composite with swap, blue, we can see that it works great here. Let's go and apply it across the entire animation. Right? If I apply it here, it's just on this one image. If I apply it here, it's on the entire animation. Let's do that. Do we want that on the entire image sequence? Yep. And so it applied that frame for frame, and you now have the resulting opening that we were seeking through what used to be the blue patch, the blue circle. And if we don't like it, if we look at this and say, oh, there was something that's not quite, oh, that's not the right image in the swap, maybe I needed a different image, well, simply click here on the stored image, that will restore it. Right, now you can look here, if you switch back to the swap, it also restored the swap image. That one got replaced. When you replace the animation, because it could be different dimensions, it could be a different frame count, there's a variety of reasons, the swap image is going to change too. So you certainly will want to make sure you have a good image in the swap there too. Let's in fact quickly concentrate on the swap. What you show in the swap image could be a very different image. Let's do, for instance, a render, something like this. Let's put the bumpy toy to work here. I haven't used the bumpy toy too much. Spiky purlin, one of my favorites. If you want to simulate something like the surface of the sun with a lot of turbulence, with some sort of a reddish color and then some self-displacement, there is just a lot of really interesting patterns you can create with that. And inverted maybe? No. Swap equals lighting, there it is. And we can see an interesting little side effect. There's the circle showing here because it's using the swap image, which is where that circle lives. And so let's okay that's the image I want to keep in the swap image. Let's go back and put that and switch it back here so we see the whole series. And now I'm going to apply that magic compositing trick. So composite with blue, and you see the image with that turbulence behind it. But it's still a static image. It's still a static, it's not really turbulent. It's not moving. And so if I look at that, maybe that's not good enough. Maybe I need that animation in the background to also be an animation, right? And that's what we're talking about here, really. We're looking for making that animation that we're looking at also an animation. We're looking at animating the foreground, which has this blue cut opening. That's this one here, right? This one's an animation, but what we want to see behind through that blue dot is also expected to be an animation, a different one, right? A different animation. So let me do this. I'm going to actually store. I'm going to create another animation, and then in the next tutorial we'll really explore a little bit more about that and some other techniques to composite, because we've seen one way to do it here, but there are other ways. There is, and I'm not going to go into it, I'm just going to show it. There is the filter collection right here where you can combine a composite with swap, right? And you can use the blue, and you can see here that you can see what image is behind it. The reason why you don't see anything here is that that is the image behind it. It is yellow as well, right? If you look here, that image is plain, in the swap image, is plain yellow. So I really need to put something different here if I want to realize what's going on. Let's put some grid there somewhere there. So let's give it something blue and different thickness. There you go. Pink perhaps. So what you see here is an image in the swap image, and I'm going to, there you go. So now you see through that opening, wherever the blue part is, it's going to make it transparent. The thing is, that's not the only way to do compositing with blue or with green or with any color, right? The composite with the color key, which is the one I'm using here, allows you to pick any color. Like if I click on the yellow, it shows all the yellow as transparent, and it reveals what color you have there behind it. Which in turn has some yellow too, but that's okay. That's the yellow that came from the swap image now. If I pick on this area, it's showing the blue as transparent, and I can see through that. If I click here, you see the blue dot going across and remaining there. Because whatever color you pick, that's the one that is set as transparent. So it's a great tool. It's very flexible, very powerful, and you can adjust it to be more or less tolerant. And tolerance is really great in this world. So let's go look at one more thing I wanted to mention. Again, I'm not going to do that in this tutorial because this has been dragging long enough, but there is another one. In addition to composite with the swap image, you can also composite with a sequence of image files: Targa, BMP, JPEG, PNG. You can, if you have an image sequence, let's say something you render out from Carrara, my favorite animation program for 3D material. If you have a poser animation, if you have an animation, or even just a still image in any other program that you save, or even in Dogwaffle, you saved it to an image file, you can use that as the trigger for which pixels are transparent. And you can composite with that sequence. So again, it's an animated sequence of images. Therefore, the selection of which pixels are, where are they, that they are the blue ones, that can also be changing over time, and it can be an alpha composition, so you use the alpha channel in those images, or it could be some other techniques, and we can explore those in other tutorials. What I'd like to do really is finish now with just an animation in the background in the swap, so that we can actually see it through that opening. So let's go and create an animation. In fact, I'll create one here. At the very bottom in the timeline there is a purlin noise, and I'll make that purlin noise the animation that we will then use in the swap image. And I'll show you just 2 or 3 different ways to do that. So here's the animation. Look at that, and I'll make it a little bit bigger, change the scale and iterations, and then the speed at which it's moving. So when I'm going here, you'll see this thing move really quickly. And the type of animation, there's a couple of different choices here too. Let's go with something like this, or this one. Let's see, what's the last one? There's 3 different styles. This one's pretty interesting too. Let's go with this, and let's not spend too much time. So let's bring the iterations down in a reasonable amount here. Have the scale a bit higher and the speed. I want that to really move quickly. Highly turbulent noise. Let's go and apply that. And so what you see here now is rendering, just as usual, a sequence of frames with this animated material. And this is sort of a Brownian noise, or purlin noise. Brownian motion, and or it reminds me of that, as every chemist and physicist will tell me that's not Brownian, but we can use that to see an animation. And the first thing we'll do, of course, is to store it, and we'll store it right there to disk. And now we can actually say right here, this is version 9.2. 9.2b actually, you have this option here to say use this animated as swap image. So like this, you can now, I'm still working on the main buffer here, mind you. So this was actually put into the main image, and here I'm going to go restore the animation from that, and this one is still the one that I use as the animated swap. Alright, so click on that to make sure it's the animated swap. You can scrub through that. Nothing will show because it's not loaded currently, but you can see it here as a preview. And that one, by the way, you can see bigger too. You can rescale that and have a good look at that and say, yep, that's the one I want in my animated swap. It should show through the blue parts if I actually go and enable the swap compositing, right, the compositive swap. So let's go do that. Right here, composite with blue screen. There it is, you see it. And as you scrub through that, not only does the blue dot move, which is in the main buffer, the main image sequence shows you the blue dot, and we're using that to composite to blue, so we see through it. The animation behind it itself is also showing. That is the magic with using this animation as a swap image. It's using the frames that are in this animation as a dynamic sequence of images in the swap buffer. So the swap image is animated, the main image is animated too, and instead of compositing to blue, we might want to composite to any color, blue or, well, yellow, and now we see the noise behind it. The blue dot is the one that remains opaque now. Alright, so let's say we want this, apply that, and we are now compositing these two together, the main image sequence with the swap image sequence, and we are done. This tutorial gives you a good intro, hopefully, on how to start working with the swap image as an animation of its own. We've seen we can store one animation that we have created and then designate it as the animated swap image, and then we can create another animation and store that. And I didn't do that in that order, you can do that in different order, but you can use that as the main image and key to blue. You can have other colors in there, they will remain opaque, but the blue ones that I select will turn transparent and show you the image behind it, which in turn is animated also. So that's the idea with the tunnels that we will be creating. The animation of the tunnel is kind of equivalent to what you see here. Let me undo that, and you'll see, so this here, the blue part is kind of the tunnel, right? This is the animation where there will be some holes that we cut open, and those windows are what allow us to see what's actually happening in the image, or in the animation sequence behind it, the image sequence behind it. You cannot select the animated swap image only through this mechanism. There are other ways. This is very new with the 9.2b release. You can select it directly from the stored DWA, but you can also find another way to do so, and that is from the animation menu. Of course, you can go here and designate a file that you have saved somewhere, either an AVI file or the Dogwaffle animation DWA file, that if you saved an animation explicitly on your file system on your hard drive, you can go and pick that and designate it as the animated swap image. And while we're at it, we can also see there is an animated selection. That's yet another thing. So you can actually also make selections that are themselves animated. And those could be also useful for a variety of compositing tricks and combining and working with multiple animations. All right, so welcome to animation or a swap buffer, swap image 101, and that was it. Signing out. This is Philip Steiger at thebest3d.com, and enjoy your Project Dogwaffle. We will be back with another tutorial on this series to explore more and more sophisticated ways to combine animations to make those nice tunnels. All right, thank you.